Okay, I think I'm live. I never know on this new producer. I think so. Hoping I'll see comments. I think so. I think I'm live. I never know on this new producer. I never know if you're going to be able to hear me or not. The settings on this kind of wig me out a little. So I'm going to wait and see if anyone joins me and whether they can tell me if they can hear me. I'm going to drop a note in my Queen School. I'm going to say I'm live now if anyone can tell me they can hear me. That would be great. Let's see. Let's see if anyone. Oh, hang on, I have 5 people watching. Can someone tell me they can hear me? That would be amazing. Because before I've tried jumping on this new producer and no one could hear me. There's no point. Kathy can hear me. Thank you. Oh, that makes me feel so much better. I must have actually clicked the right things. Oh, thanks, Snap. I abbreviate names, but I forget to check if that's actually okay with you, Natalie. That's okay. All right, so what I was actually doing was I wanted to jump in here. I had Queen School finishes today, and there's been a few last minute requests for sort of ending information, I suppose. And one of those was from beautiful Nicole, and I know she, oh, thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Lisa. We're coming to make a live time with you, so just know we haven't forgotten about you. Beautiful Nicole wouldn't mind me saying this. So she wants to, and I get this question a lot, and so I want to make sure that whatever programs you're doing with me, that you're able to really equilibrate and balance the perceptions of no one deserves to be on a pedestal or a pit. Both are pretty horrendous places to be for yourself and for anyone else that you put up there or down there. So the work that I always do with women is whenever we're running an infatuation story or whenever we're running a resentment story, that we make sure we're looking for the other side so that we can equilibrate ourselves. And it's that space sort of right in between, that support and challenge, where we find our greatest expansion. So I often get this question is, and if you've read any of Carly Marie's work, she put out a book, I think it was last year, called Soul Mode. So it's another version of feminine embodiment that looks at the cycles outside of perhaps the moon cycle that you might be used to, and I think provides a framework for more flexibility and more tangibility in work and also in life. So one of her modes she calls bear mode. So this is a mode where you just want to, hide away and be beary and, everything sucks and you suck and the whole world is, awful. And I think often when you hit those phases, it can be exceptionally difficult to then look at the work that I do and go, I can have that for me, because it can look too unobtainable. And I want to make sure that we're spending lots of time. I mean, if you listen to the podcast on Nourishing the Mother, you know that there's nothing really that I hide. My life is as it is. So on social media and everywhere, I think beware the person who exits the scene of social media. I always think if you're really and truly authentically living everything that you are, it's an absolute joy to show up, as opposed to I can only show up when I'm blah, 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 in which case it's pretty hard to hold that mask on for a really long time and you'll need to exit it at some point. So beautiful Nicole writes in here, you know what I'm feeling like I need to hear? More of the mess you once were, Julie. If you were, I'm sure you were. Some days, today and the past week or two, I dip into feeling lost, hopeless almost, as though nothing is changing, and after years of this work, I'm not getting anywhere. But I know I am, yet I forget. I look up to you, Julie, and go, wow, I want this. I can be this. Yet I know you were never always like this. To hear more of what you were once and are now would inspire me greatly because I know within I too can become. I am becoming. Hope my random moment of heart rambling makes sense. And of course, all the other beautiful queens underneath are like, oh my God, yes, it's been on my mind a lot too. Yes, yes. So I said I'm going to drop in here and just to answer her questions. So, and if you've got any, let me know. Bron, Katie, Alice, yay! Carly. So all my beautiful queens in here, which is gorgeous. Not going to lie, it was probably a full 2 weeks. Sucks. Big love. This whole of this week. Yes, Elise, I know. And Bron full on bear mode last week. Yeah, like I really get it. I really get it. So I want to make sure, so we've been rocking out to music in the background. So if you can hear it in the background, that's what's going on out there. And I've left out my beautiful sensory girls with some sensory activities, beautiful painting on their hands and music. So they're going to be happy in here for a while. I've missed you. I've missed you too, Bron. I'm assuming you're saying that to me. Maybe not. I won't make that assumption. All right. So I do want to talk about this. But I really want to be prompted to, because there's no part I'm not happy to talk about. I just go, it's hard. I think the truth of it for me is whenever I run Queen School, because Queen School is a really intensive 10-week focus on relationships. So it's an incredibly transformative space where women enter with one type of relationship and they exit with a completely different type of relationship. And I take that process over 10 weeks with women exceptionally seriously. And I bring all of myself to that as a process. So energetically, I'm flooding this space with all of the energy of movement and transformation and old wounds and traumas and triggers, and we're kind of moving it all apart and moving towards something that's really new as a language, like entering a new country or learning a new language for the first time. You've got to, learn so much of the individual characters before you can form a sentence, before you can start to engage in a, street type of way. So it's a lot of learning. So in the law of conservation, if you want to universally look at what happens within that, there's always equal and opposites happening all of the time. So when all of my relationship juice and focus funnels into Queen School, the fallout of that for me is that it moves out and away from my own intimate relationship. So whenever I run Queen School, I'm also fully aware as I enter that space that it will also be the hardest time for me in my relationship because I have so much energy flowing here. The law of conservation is that it leaves here. So as these beautiful queens are doing all of their work, I'm having to remember from the very beginning, almost, it feels like, all of the practices and all of the ways of engagement that we talk about within that space that do create enormous change. I have to apply like I'm a beginner again. One of the beautiful women, and Amelia, who does all my VA work, is a black belt in karate. And I always think it's fantastic because she always reminds me of this. She says, whenever we take new students, I think it's green belts, correct me if I'm wrong, into a practice, she said, what we must do first is stand on a line with the green belts, with our black belts, and remember what it's like to be here. Remember what it's like to be back at the very beginning, so full of uncertainty and without the confidence of so many years of practice. And so part of that spiritual practice is to remember who you are and where you begin from the very beginning, she said, before we enter any level of training with our new students. And I just love that because that's so much of a stoic practice in a way, is to remember the beginning and to remove any sense of hierarchy or levels, despite the fact that even they have a hierarchy system of all of the different colored belts. There's still a spiritual focus of oneness, right? That we're all the same, that there is no levels, no greater than, no less than. It's all one. And if you forget that beginning, then it's pretty hard to advance. And I think to embody all of the spiritual teachings that go along with it. So whenever I enter a container like Queen School that's really intensive, I also know that within me, I will be called to enter every part of the shadow in relationship that I move through, and to go back to the beginning and remember So I can love this because I can see its functionality and its purpose in the law of conservation. I can see its purpose in I think being a great teacher is to remember where you begun and know how to dial down the incredibly complex into something that's incredibly simple. I think the greatest teachers are the ones who can do simplicity so well. And I love the reminder of what it feels like from the beginning. So whilst it's hard and can feel brutal, and sometimes I'm like, oh God, here we are. I also, from a spiritual practice perspective, love the invitation that this sort of framework provides. So I say that because I want you to know that I don't think the mess ever leaves. I think if the mess left, you'd be an enlightened soul and you would no longer need this human incarnation, right? Like, the beauty is the mess. The difference is that I've learned how to love the mess and how to use the mess for my own growth and empowerment, which is how I see it set up to be and for, as opposed to feeling at the whim or the mercy of forces or people outside of me. So when I think about why I don't feel so messy anymore, and maybe perhaps how you could, I try to be as open and honest as I can. Maybe you see it more on Nourishing the Mother, perhaps, than on the Pleasure Nutritionist. But I don't find myself in those super hard places anymore because of that framework. And I can see the younger version of myself who was always waiting to be initiated, waiting to be given permission, waiting for him to notice, him to do, him to say, him to blah, blah, whatever. And I I feel really sorry for that version of me back then, because I realized how much of me I was just giving away or had been trained to give away to people and intimacy outside of myself. So what I want women to be able to do is to be able to read and find the function in the dysfunction from the perspective of it's set up towards your growth. It's not in the way of your growth. And we have to stop waiting for the people outside of us to give us what is innately ours to begin with. And that your body, your sexuality, your relationship, your joy, your happiness, your fulfillment is not anybody else's responsibility but yours. And no one else can give it to you in the way that is deeply satiating and fulfilling in the way that you can give it to yourself. But I think we're still very much lost in a culture where we like to get, and we deserve a lot, and we deserve to be loved a certain way, and we deserve blah, blah, blah. And from a spiritual perspective, I really struggle with that as a framework, though I can understand it because I can remember all of the pieces of me that lived that way. But I think the greatest understanding for me is to take the level of empowerment back and take my body back and take my energy back, rather than waiting for a set of circumstances outside of myself. So when I'm feeling super berry, as Carly would say, go read her Soul Mode book if you have not yet. Hang on, I will catch up on your notes because it doesn't scroll. I thought you weren't writing. I'll catch up on them. When I'm feeling super berry, now my very first practice is to ask myself, what do I need? What do I want right now? Because I spent a lifetime, I spent a childhood and an adolescence not being comfortable with my own needs because the needs of others outside of me were more important, or that's how I was trained. And we're always being trained because we're human and we like to lay down neural pathways. And that there was a level of story around selfishness, around someone who is needy and honors their own needs, that I had to bust through. I thought of something else and it left my brain. I hope it comes back. So when I'm feeling super bare, and permission, self-permission, because we still sometimes run this story that there'll be these consequences outside of us that are so old from our childhood, and yet we kind of implant them on top of our partner and our relationship. And we keep waiting for permission, you know. So the first thing I do now is ask myself what I really need right now. What would actually feel really good for me right now? Good for my body, good in my body, good in my soul. What would feel good in my using all of my senses? Sometimes that's going to be, I'm going to fucking do my hair because I don't do my hair. And I just want to tell you why I don't do it, because I'm actually a bit of a spaz with my hair. Can you see this? I tried to do my hair yesterday with like this crimper thing and I burned my head. So now I have this burn on my head. So I'm actually a bit of a tool when it comes to my hair. So largely I have a hair that I can just, you know, do this with and I'm done and that's it. And anyway, so doing my hair for me required probably an hour. Oh, I have a little person. Hi. Oh my lord. How's your painty hands going? I'm just doing a live. You can come. Oh, you did wash them. They're just very pink. Do you want to come and sit here? Or you're going to go back to Lozzie? What's your plan?
I want you to make me baked bean jaffles.
A baked bean jaffle?
Yeah, like Heath had fun.
Heath has fun. Okay, well, I'm just doing a tiny bit of work. But you could ask Heath.
No, Heath said no to me.
Heath said no?
No.
Oh, boo for Heath. What about Dad?
No.
Do you want to go tell Heath that I'd love to have a chat to him?
Yeah.
Okay. You go tell Heath. You see, this is life. Parenting and working together, not separate. Not separate. She's going to love saying, Heath, Mum wants to talk to you. All right. So when I'm feeling buried, the first thing I ask myself is, what do I need? And depending on what that answer is, sometimes that's going to look like, I just want to curl up with a hot water bottle and have a nap for 10 minutes. Or I want to put on Netflix and choose a movie that just makes me cry like the center of my body is craving to. Or sometimes that's going to look like, I actually just want to love this body that right now I'm hating on a bit. So I'm going to use the art of adornment and celebrate this body. I'm going to do my hair and think, oh, it's actually really beautiful. And I'm going to put lipstick on that I almost never do and think, oh, it just feels lovely. And I'm going to rub oil into my skin and I'm going to choose clothes that make me feel good, because you change your state, your adornment, and you change how you feel. I think from years of working with women in birth, whenever they got stuck, I always knew we just needed change. Change the room, change the music, change the vibe, change the energy, change the environment. Like just change. Change that lets you be led into a different experience as well, but one that you get to create. So I always come back to, if I'm struggling to love this body, is what is it that I can do to remember why I love it and how I love it, to remember how good it feels to be in here. And some days it's going to look, you know, really different to other days. But I don't wait for my partner to give me those things. I give them to myself. I feed myself first. But I think back with baby 1 and 2, I fed myself last. I was pretty good at giving myself the scraps that were left over, because that's what I was used to receiving. That's what I'd been programmed I was allowed, is the scraps left over. So I was comfortable with scraps, and I was very uncomfortable with anything that looked like abundance outside of that. So it was fairly barren, like a desert sometimes, I think. The beauty of that, though, is when you end up so far down in the well, at some point you're sick of dying there, and you learn how to claw your way out of there. And it's that you let go of all of the layers of the self that got you down there to begin with, I think, in that process, so that when your face hits the sunlight as you emerge from that well, you can't ever go back down there. So I would say, though, the balance of that was that by giving up on my body and the surface of my body, and kind of hating on my partner a lot, really drove me towards a focus on my internal world. So I connected. I mean, one of the laws of the universe is the one and the many. So we're always picking the one or the many. So when you reject the one, you actually gravitate towards the many, and that's entirely functional. So by rejecting the one, by him providing the perfect playground in which I kind of hated him, and I moved myself, there's that repulsion, moved myself away from him, I found resources in the many. So it was when I really deeply immersed and connected to every woman and group, facilitator, everything that was available back, 14, 13 years ago for natural parenting. So I deeply immersed in a truth within myself that I had never animated or discovered by virtue of rejecting and turning my back on a level of intimacy here. It moved over here, and to the many. Rejected the one, found the many. So can you see all the universal laws playing out? And that was deeply purposeful for my soul. Sorry, I don't know how to turn off those things from Messenger. I assume she's not coming back. She's sorted herself out. And also in spiritual circles. So I really I found gurus and all sorts of circles, spaces and places in which to explore this whole part of me that I had kept fairly boxed up and away from my husband, because I assumed it wasn't for him, and he was this pretty, cookie cutter, stock standard kind of Aussie bloke, and here was me being all pretty woo over here, and I didn't think those worlds could merge. I think that's my art now, is I've learned how to merge them, and in fact that's way better than keeping them separated. But initially that's what I did. So there was a lot of hurt and rejection in the early days with my husband, and I've had to learn. I mean, you only teach what you've learned, right? I mean, every teacher who's teaching something is because they've themselves been wounded in that process. I mean, that's the beauty of it. So I still spiral through layers of that. That's the woman's journey. I think it's a labyrinth. We just continue to move around, and we get deeper and deeper wisdom and insight as we do that. I think the core wounds probably never really leave. I think we need voids to fuel our values in Demartini's words. So let me catch up. Hang on. Oh, Chloe Amelia says white belt. 6 weeks in grading from brown belt to black belt, but yes, to remember where we have come from. It's so profound. It is so profound. Thanks, white belt. I don't know it. All right, let me come back up here. Hang on. Oh my God, I feel so excited to be on this live with you all. I've missed it. I missed it too. So good. I mean, I miss it in Queen's School too. Such a rad container. Oh, thanks, Carly. Queen School is the best thing ever. I really feel that too. Stop beeping at me. Bron, Prob's going to cry when this live is finished. Means we're all done. I know. But back in with Flowers and Honey tomorrow. Yes, Flowers and Honey starts tomorrow. So, which is why I did that, because I also feel really sad when Queen School ends. To have something that we can just move back into and lift the energy on sounds amazing. So Flowers and Honey is tomorrow, and that is all about a focus container around sexuality. Katie says totally agree. Not sure what that was for, Katie, but great. Elise says that's incredible. I've felt that over the last week as we finish up, there's this full circle, and I've got so much energy going to my own creative projects, but my relationship has gone kaput. Yeah, but I just want you to see the law of conservation there. That sexual energy, the energy of creation and you know, bonding, like think about the level of oxytocin, doesn't disappear. It just morphs form to empower all of the different areas of life. Now, I think once you can understand that, as you heard me say I do with Queen School, is to see that that's at play and then put in the tools so that you can begin to bring a level of mastery over where that energy and oxytocin flows. But initially and unconsciously, that's all it's doing is it hasn't left. It's just morphed form. And you can't ask something to appear somewhere if you have not first got super, what's the word, reverence, full of gratitude for where it does exist, not that it's left your body and you're somehow vacant of this, you know, trait. It's just literally morphed form. Like, and that's a really beautiful thing. I feel like I need to go back and listen to the King Queen Union videos all over again. I really recommend that, Elise. Honestly, I mean, you've heard me say that probably several times, but because you changed so much over the 10 weeks, now when you go back, you'll hear something completely different. So I would absolutely recommend you do that. Bron, yes, agree. This is exactly where I'm at too. Being in the rock bottom and grief and despair was hard to come out of, but it's not the way. I needed to hear Julie today and be with you, Queen. Oh, I'm so glad. Yes, it's perfectly timed. Yes, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. All of this, permission and check-ins, get rid of the old programs and stories, get back to self. Yes. Katie, yes, love asking myself what I need. It's been transformational. Great. When Gwen comes in, she seems to all the time, doesn't she? Oh, that face just like my daughter's. Yeah. I get so excited when Gwen comes in. Oh, this is so great for me to know because there's part of me that still feels a little shamey about it, which I want to get rid of. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I love watching you parent anyone else. Oh, good. I'm so glad I get all giddy. You're so ace. Sparkle mode is all about the adornment vibes for me. Yeah. Katie, oh, thanks for the reminder. I just hopped out of the shower, so put on a pretty floral dress to run my online group and now feel amazing. Yeah, man. Change your adornment, you change your energy. Holy moly, this is what I needed to hear. I'm so glad, Jody. Bron, voids never really leave. Oh, I needed to hear all this today. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I really want you to because like this is why I always say there's no such thing as right or wrong. There's only ever practice. Life is orchestrated for your practice. And your practice, the bigger the pain, the bigger the transformation. Those two things are not separate. The bigger the pain, the bigger the transformation, right? So if this pain is really big, it means what it's holding within it is an absolute diamond of transformation for you. If that's how you enter it, that's how I enter it. That's how I ask the women in my groups to enter it, is to see what a gift, you know, this is when it gets really hard. The only other thing that I wanted to say in here in terms of when it gets really hard and I can look back on the me that would have got all cut up about it and lost myself in rejection stories. And the more he didn't meet me and didn't give me what I wanted, just a side note, I wasn't giving it to myself and nor was I open to him, but this is me back then. The more he didn't give me what I wanted, poor bloke didn't know, but you know, that's a story for another day. The more I closed, shut off my energy, and in fact probably had a few, the spikes and the prickles would just start growing towards him, like some sort of cool geode. And the more that the spikes came out, the more he would disappear, move backwards, or go into this little boy mode of, am I a good boy? It's okay. This, I don't know. The more tentative he was, the more I was like, oh, you're so disgusting. I'm repulsed right now. Or, fuck you for not knowing. Right. I mean, I talk about this in the framework of the Ice Queen, the shutting down and shutting him out. and then getting more cut up and hurt about the fact that he can't enter you when now it's a wall of ice that he can't penetrate. So I realize that when the going gets tough in relationships for me, and I start feeling those old feels again, and I know they're old, I know they're not truth because I've busted them too many times to believe them now. I know I have to really consciously create the space and the time, which is very unsexy, to be intimate with him and my body. The only way to melt the walls of ice that I had built up and become more stiff and still in my own body is to work out how to invite him into that space, be with what is in my body, with him, in his presence. There's something incredible about being witnessed, I think, that power packs the transformation. The more I could bring him into my process rather than trying to keep it separate and just something that I did on my own and he had no idea about, the more tools he got, the more he could meet me, the more I was able to surrender, the better our intimacy got. But that comes by at some point calling pattern interrupt and going, it's fucking it, like I know I need a session with you. And that's what in my head, that's what I feel, okay, that's it, Julie, enough. Please grow up. We're having a session. And so I spend time doing my own work. So all those things I talked about before, journaling, what am I holding on to? Because often we kind of like tuck a whole load of stuff in our back pocket and we're like, hanging on to that, hanging on to that, hanging on to that, hanging on to that. So then when he does the one thing, I'm like, oh, well, now you've got the one thing. And out comes this back pocket of shit and it's got no idea what's going on. So I create the space for intimacy. So for me, that looks like setting up my bedroom to be the place and the space of my opening, my seductress, my surrender. I don't have kids' stuff in this room. Every other room of my house is plastered with things about children, but not my bedroom. My bedroom is the space for me as a lover, not me as a mother. So I put very clear rules around myself and what comes into this space. So of course children move in and out of it. Of course kids come in and out of my bed. Like I'm still an attachment parent, but I don't decorate my walls with what reminds me of service and motherhood and the masculine polarity. I coat my bedroom in textures and surfaces and colors that remind me of my feminine and my ability to seduce and surrender. Really, seduction is surrender. It's not an act of penetration. But more on that in Files and Honey. So I make sure that my room is set up for me. And I'm a very sensual creature. So I know the more things that I put in place for my own sensual opening, which just means using my senses, the better I will be, the better my experience will be, the better I set myself up, the better I will be on the other end of that. So I layer everything in. I layer as many things as I can. I call it scaffolding, but you can call it whatever you want to call it, that set me up as best as I possibly can for my surrender and opening, because I know it's really hard for me to do that. I know it's really hard if I stay in my masculine. So I set up as many structures as I can to tap in, energetically remind me, and create the safety outside of my own inner masculine, right? To let go. Because when I let go with him, I don't know what it's, I don't know. I want to cry. I want to like, I want to do all the things. It's, see, I can't even get words out. It's a feeling in my body. I'm like, I spent so many years thinking that I had to do it on my own. And then it had to look like a really conscious conversation with him. But sometimes words get in the fucking way. I think the next level from learning how to communicate really well is learning how to have no words and communicate really well. I think that's the play space. So I really consciously set up my space for my surrender when the going gets tough, so that I remember, so that he has an opportunity to reconnect. Because if I stay on this path, I know the thickness just builds. And I don't want to live a life where there's sickness and mediocrity and half-lived moments. Like, I just don't. So there's a certain level of I open myself to experiencing pain because I know in that process it turns into ecstasy, and they're not separate. So is there anything else that I can help you beautiful women with the mess? Because chances are I've been or had an experience exactly like you. Exactly like you. All right, okay. You're talking to someone who's been doing this work solidly for 20 years. And before that, had a childhood set up for energetic mastery, for emotional mastery. That's why I'm here, Masterful. That's why I'm here to hopefully dial down the complex into something that's tangible and simple so that you can have it in your life, because there's nothing that like opens my heart more than watching women love better. But I know how hard that is. And I know how revolutionary that is. And I know how triggering that can be. But I want you to know that the mess is on the way. And the mess is trying to guide you towards the light. You know, it's not separate. So I don't read the mess as the thing that stops me. I read the mess as the place I begin again. And so it inspires me. I don't stay stuck in my hard bits for long because I don't fight them and I don't hate them. I love them. I love them like my lover. But that doesn't look like peace. You can't live continuously in expansion. The universe breathes. There's an in-breath that you must return inwards. And there's an out-breath where you grow. And then there's another in-breath. And you check in with your integrity. You're offered moments for growth. And then you expand back out again. There's always an in-breath followed by an out-breath. Always. So love that. The in-breath is, I think, for a feminine being far more like healing. There's far more wisdom in the in-breath than there is in the out-breath, but we're in a culture that requires that we continuously seek for the evolution that is scaled outside of us, without there being the in-breath. The in-breath is where it's at. And in fact, the space between the two is like Mm. You don't want to miss that moment. That moment, where there's new life. Just think of it like the space of borders, like the moment the ocean brushes the sand on the shore and those little seashells ripple. The moment the frost on a frozen lake meets the very first fern fronds, and it's like magic fairyland. The moment the meadow meets the forest, it's the space between the two that's ecstatic, right? The space of new life, the space of the union of the two. You can love the forest as the forest is, and you can love the meadow as the meadow is. They don't have to change. But when they come together and they love each other, there's an ecstasy in that. That's the space between your in-breath and your out-breath too. That's the space between two meadows or two forests, not so ecstatic. Love will make you the same. Desire requires that there's polarity and opposites that create an ecstatic meeting in the middle. And that place, fuck me, I'd choose to live there. If I could. But I know at some point I have to choose if I'm going to inhale and choose life, or exhale and choose a death. Because with an expansion, there's a death, right? We're so uncomfortable with all of the mini deaths all the time. So, I could talk 1,000 things to just keep going today. Now we could talk about death. It's not what I came on here for. All right. Okay. Love the hard places like your lover. Yes. Hashtag Queen Essential. That was our hashtag in Queen School for the bomb moments that we wanted to remember. Are there hard or stuck things you want to know how like you I am? Because what I would hate is that you look over here and in some way you assume it can't be yours, or you put me on a pedestal. It's a hideous place to be because I'm also really human, and I just want to remind you how I burnt my head. Like, you have to balance the people that you have an infatuation with. When you enter somebody's mastery, it's usually because they are very masterful and empowered in the things that you are less masterful and less empowered in. And so you want to be with the teacher who's more empowered. But don't make that mean that you are less and they are more, because the truth is you are equally as masterful in a different area of life that likely they are underempowered in. It's just mastery in one form, which has come with a lifetime of pain. Lifetime. It took me a long time to love my pain. Oh, Nicole. Yes, this replay is for you. I'm driving home after a weekend of queen solitude and self-love for me. Oh, well, this will be the perfect video for you. So I'll drop the link into Queen School. But yeah, please rewatch it. Let me know if there's anything else you need. But I just want you to know, me too. I've been exactly where you are. I want to make sure that we're always keeping our teachings relevant and doable and less esoteric. I love the super woo, but I really want to make sure that we dial it down into something that's also super practical. I want you to be empowered on that process. So if you're not doing flowers and honey with me tomorrow, please do it. I can already feel the energy building in my body, and I'm like, it's going to be so good. I think there's something extraordinary about having a container that energetically holds you and that reminds you and that helps you remember how to go inwards with your in breath and how to expand beyond with your out breath. And I just think that is spectacular. Maybe I'll meet you in the middle part, right? A place of ecstasy. It's where I like to be. So, big love to you. Thank you for joining me and sharing your time with me. I know how precious that is. I do. So I hope you do something really special for yourself today to change your energy. I would love to hear about it if you have. And if you're in Flowers and Honey, I will see you tomorrow. I'm very excited. And if you're not, I am going to drop the link in here because I would love you to join us. And then if you're coming on for Honey Club after that, you do need to have done some sort of work with me to make sure I'm your teacher. Because Honey Club is the space to really have a certain depth and level of conversation and practice that you need to make sure I'm the teacher for you for. So I really hope you enjoy your day. I'll see you.